Countries in the Northern Hemisphere are having a dry summer, and it's starting to impact global grain markets, particularly corn and wheat. Global price indices have started to rise, and consumers all over the world are reacting with concern, with good reason. Although this year's production levels will be a significant decline from last year, they are still likely to be higher than 2 years ago. But prices in some areas have hit all-time highs. And while high commodity prices may be good news for traders, they spell political turmoil for countries that rely on imports to satisfy domestic consumers. In the former Soviet Union, the grain hubs of Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan are all expecting substantial declines in their wheat production. Together, these countries produce 15% of the world's wheat, and this year are expecting more than a 30% decline in production from last year. In North America, major droughts are affecting the U.S. corn crop, with output this year projected to be down almost 13% in 1 year. In total, the world's wheat crop for the 2012-2013 season is expected to decline by 5%. For corn, global production will be down by just 3%, but global trade in these commodities will contract by a larger amount, wheat by 12% and corn by 8% compared to last year. The reason for this difference is that most global grain producers consume the majority of what they grow. Only a handful of producers have enough arable land to produce more than their populations can consume. Just 7 countries, as well as the European Union, produce 90% of globally traded wheat. In addition to the former Soviet states and the EU, the United States, Canada, Argentina, and Australia fit this profile. The global corn market is even smaller. 84% is exported by just 4 countries: the United States, Argentina, Ukraine, and Brazil. The United States alone exports more than 50% of the world's corn. The result is that weather fluctuations in a handful of key temperate countries can affect people all over the world. And just as there are countries with agricultural advantages, there are those who find themselves all too easily at the mercy of global markets. Tropical climates are unsuitable for growing most grains, and deserts with no access to irrigation pose problems for most agriculture. Limitations in domestic production leave many populations dependent on imports to satisfy consumption. A number of globally important countries are reliant on imports for more than half of their consumption. Japan, the 3rd largest economy in the world, is reliant on imports for nearly 100% of its corn and wheat consumption, in addition to its growing reliance on foreign supplies of energy. Egypt, a country prone to unrest and in a particularly delicate political moment, is reliant on imports for about half of its consumption. Mexico, for which corn is a culturally important staple, is reliant on mostly U.S. supplies for about half of its wheat and a third of its corn. Other heavily reliant countries include Indonesia, South Korea, Colombia, as well as many Caribbean, Middle Eastern, and North African states. Grain prices have already risen 20% since December, and for countries exposed to international markets, the prospect of additional price hikes is sure to cause political consternation. Many governments may be forced to take action to protect their domestic markets. Producers may limit exports to protect domestic markets, and governments providing food subsidies will find themselves with an increasing fiscal burden. But it is important to put these changes in perspective. Technological gains have improved global production greatly in the past several decades. Although the total global area harvested for corn and wheat has only increased by 22% since 1970, yields per hectare have more than doubled, keeping up with population growth. Indeed, while this year's harvest will be lower than last year's, it is still above the decade average. The biggest impact will be felt by importers great and small, and the economic strain of rising prices will inject an additional level of global political friction as the drought worsens and the year progresses.